It's good to be back. And in fact, this time around, I wanted to address something that a number of you have asked multiple times. Hey, Venkat, when it comes to CxO level conversations, tell us about the cultural nuances behind these conversations. Now, of course, the first thing that you need to remember is that irrespective of culture, the person whom you're meeting is a human being. So when you think about human beings, I mean, when you speak to them, there should always be a container of safety. There should be empathy in conversations. There should be a lot of preparation so that you're able to add value and structure the conversations. So that's what I call foundations. Now, before you meet a person from a different culture, start thinking about, hey, is this a low context culture or a high context culture? High context cultures are primarily cultures where they speak, where they communicate without speaking, right? Low context cultures are more verbal, they'll tell you as it is. Now, it is not about just high context, low context polarities. You have to look at where are you relative to those polarities. So, maybe as against the US, India perhaps would look like a high context culture, but compared to Japan, India would look like a low context culture. So, I hope you understand relative differences. Now, once you have understood, hey, culturally, who could this person be, start observing the finer nuances of their behavioral styles. Start looking at, hey, are they asking you questions or are they telling you something? Are they operating from reason? Are they operating from emotion? That clearly tells you what exactly is their behavioral style. I realized, I mean, I was having a meeting earlier this week where this person started asking me, hey, what do you understand about the new value proposition for our organization? Right? And of course, I mean, I didn't want to jump in and say everything about what I knew. I said, hey, thank you. I mean, I may not be so sure. Why don't you tell me what's the new value proposition? But then I could sense that this is a person who is asking, and this is a person who requires detail, which is why right through the conversation, I was able to go ahead and get into a lot more detail that built their confidence in me. Now, once you have solved for the cultural aspects, the behavioral aspects, start thinking about the communication aspects as well. Are they speaking directly? Are they speaking indirectly? Right? Indirectly means, are they saying, hey, we are thinking about considering a move towards becoming more digitalized? God knows what that means. So, very clearly, think about whether it's direct or indirect. That also tells you how you need to tailor your responses. A couple of other factors that I also look out for in cultural contexts is primarily how they go ahead and look at deciding, right? When they decide, is it more consensus driven or is it more top down? I have seen leaders who say, hey, that's a great idea. What do all of you think? Correct? They are primarily looking at more consensus rather than them taking the decision. The last element to look out for in these conversations is what I call conflict orientation. So, do they walk towards conflict? Are they walking against, away from conflict? Because that really tells you whether you can dial the tension up in conversations as well. Now, remember, when you have these CXO conversations, awareness gives you choice. Choice is power. So, when you have these conversations, think about how much am I prepared for this conversation? Think about how well am I resonating in this conversation? How well am I tailoring this conversation? At the same time, how well you're structuring this conversation so that it's valuable to the person whom you're meeting. Right? So, when you think about cultural nuances, think about all of these different elements when you move forward. I use a simple acronym. I call it CBCDCT, which is all about, hey, culturally, am I aware? behaviorally am I observing, communication styles am I looking at, their decision styles am I looking at, their conflict styles am I looking at, and lastly, their trust orientation. Is it more relationship based or is it more task based? That really tells me how I can really work with the CxO. I'm hoping this is useful for you, right? Every time that you work across cultures, and I've worked across scores of cultures, what I've realized is people may look different, but it's still a human being on the other side. So build that human connection, look into their eyes, and feel that humanity. And let's leverage this greater understanding to build more of a connection, more communication, more collaboration, and therefore greater success for both of you. Good luck.